were in Portsmouth, England, for 3 years.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to another meeting of the Coronado Roundtable on this less than beautiful foggy morning. I'm Christian Espin, the president of the Roundtable. Thank you all for coming. We will be having another enlightening and very informative presentation this morning. But before we start the program, let us have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you will please stand.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you may know, our programs are recorded for live Zoom recording. And we would like again to thank the Coronado Public Library for presenting this service for us and for the community. And for that endeavor, for those of you at home, if you could please mute your computer or device and please turn off your cameras. You may use the chat box for the Q&A portion of the program that will follow. For this service this morning, I'd like to thank Zoe Barretts here. And also, I would like to thank, as well as the Roundtable Board, thank the Coronado Library Board of Trustees who have considered the Coronado Roundtable as a sponsored organization. So thank you to the Library Board and the Coronado Public Library so that we can provide this service to the community. Our coffee this morning, again, is provided by Amalo Brew, the coffee cart in front of the library. So we do ask for a $3 donation for coffee. And even if you don't think it, we do appreciate any donations to help us. This morning, we have a very special presentation. But before we move on to that, let me inform you that in November, the program will be held on the 15th. That is the third Friday of the month, to Thanksgiving. So that will be on the 15th. And that will be another very special program on the topic of the League of Wives. Mark that on your calendar for the 15th. Today, to introduce our speaker, Dr. Khai will be our former president, a very special Kirk Henry. Kirk, will you make the introduction?
Well, what I'm about to do is open up my book, and I hope I don't press a single key on the laptop before me. Well, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Khai. Now, we have had, just be upfront about this, we've had a communications disaster this morning because a certain email that goes out didn't go out this week. First time it's ever happened. And when I advised Dr. Nguyen of this catastrophe, he looked me dead in the eye without blinking and said, well, we'll have a great presentation. It'll be quality over quality. So thank you for coming. I appreciate your presence. To introduce this speaker could take several minutes. So I'm going to make it short. Dr. Nguyen is a board certified physician in internal medicine and geriatric medicine and was a previous hospice medical director. He provides primary and specialty care of senior patients with an emphasis on disease prevention, treatment of chronic illnesses, geriatric syndromes and preservation of function. He also serves as a national medical director of the Community Health Accreditation Partner, an accrediting organization for community-based care such as home health and hospice, focusing on quality of care and initiatives like age-friendly care. Now, I'm going to skip his medical qualifications and say a little bit about the institute that he works with and for. As part of the UC San Diego medical system, it could be known as the Center for Healthy Aging or the Stein Institute for Research on Aging. The first presenter from that organization came to the Coronado Roundtable in 2008. And what made that so outstanding is that we were on the verge of having to, for the first time ever, cancel because of a cancellation of a speaker at the last minute. I called the Stein Institute and we had a speaker in about a minute and a half. So since then, we've had a Stein Institute speaker about once every other year since 2008. So we've had a wide range of presentations. And so today, Dr. Khai Gyuyen.
Hi, thank you very much. I really appreciate those kind words, and it is very nice to be here this morning with the Coronado Roundtable, with or without the mass email. So we'll do our best to really focus on the quality of the presentation. Really, I think time is left aside for questions, and I always find that to be the most productive. So I'm presenting today on an inconvenient care. And really as an opportunity for age-friendly care. I'm not sure how many in the audience have perhaps heard that word, but there is a significant movement over the last, I'd say, 6 to 7 years now, to really help promote age-friendly care across the country and in larger health systems. So a little bit about me, the speaker background, I think Kirk had already shared that with you. My background is in internal medicine, and I also had expert training in geriatric medicine, which is the care of older adults. And also, I have also practiced hospice medicine as well. My past experience was in public health and health policy. I had a short stint at the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services in Washington, but technically the headquarters is in Baltimore. Maryland, and I served there with the Healthy Aging Project, and currently now I serve as the National Medical Director at an accrediting organization that's deemed by CMS itself. And most importantly, I myself have been a family member and a former caregiver to an older adult patient and family member as well, and that's something I hold near and dear to me. So I want to introduce you all to the idea that we are currently almost in the middle of the decade of healthy aging. This was designated by the United Nations in conjunction with the World Health Organization to say that there is an unprecedented aging globally, and we're starting to see more and more older adults across many countries. I had a lot of statistics in here, but I actually ended up taking it out because when I had presented it on earlier presentations, people said it was just a bunch of too much numbers. So again, we'll focus on the quality rather than the quantity at this point. Some of you have maybe seen some of these numbers here, but we are at a point now and a juncture where the first time in our history as a country, we're starting to see that older adults will outnumber children. And that's not too long out. And the reason why we're seeing that is that there is the aging of the baby boom population. By 2030, we expect that this will occur, where there will be more older adults, which is defined as 65 plus, than there are children, and especially with the birth rates decreasing as well in our country, and what we're seeing in other developed countries as well. Here's another way to see it here. Because of this demographic shift and change, we're starting to see greater demands for healthcare, and I don't think that surprises a lot of you in the audience. In-home caregiving services and needs, assisted living facilities, a strain on the Social Security retirement system. And what we know and understand is that it takes about 3.5 working age adults to support one older adult in Social Security. And by 2060, this will fall to 2.5. And so with that said though, I think those are some of the numbers that seem to be so concerning. And I don't want to be up here just talking about a doomsday scenario. And I don't think it is a doomsday scenario, but I think it's good for us to understand more about what it is to be aging in this country and some of the demographics. But what does that also mean to be aging personally? So I'd like to share a few things from my perspective as a geriatrician, taking care of older adults, and a little bit about aging. So I get asked a lot in clinic, what is normal aging and what is abnormal aging? And so normal aging, the definition is, it is a complex process, which our body and organ systems undergoes some level of expected change. And that change oftentimes is wear and tear over the years. And it generally is the absence of disease or pathology. Sometimes I have older adults come in the clinic and they say, oh, you know, my knees are hurting and I can't walk as well anymore, and I had a fall. That's just aging. And that is truly not normal aging, although we do expect some wear and tear. As we think about it, then what is abnormal aging then? This too is a complex process, which our body organ systems undergoes an unexpected change and distortion of normal function. So if your kidneys are supposed to be filtering the blood to create urine and excrete or secrete the toxins out, that's what it should do. But when there's a disruption of that normal function, that becomes a disease. And therefore, there is a greater likelihood that diseases and pathological processes can occur, but that does not mean that that is normal aging necessarily. And I'm sure that's going to bring a lot of questions for those in the audience, whether virtually or here, but we can delve into it a little further on the Q&A sessions. So this is something that I oftentimes share with our medical students and medical residents, but I figured it just as important to share here as well. And the coloration is so strange here. Let me see. Things were a little loose here, so that was pathological. That was pathological. We fixed it. So here's an example. Here we talk about homeostasis, which is a natural process in our bodies where things like the body's chemistry, the body's temperature, and in the various bodily functions are kept in a balance. And when that changes as we age, there's a process called homeostenosis. Stenosis just means a narrowing. And what that means is that it is a natural process for our human bodies to undergo homeostasis towards homeostenosis, which is where there would be an expected decrease in the body's ability and also flexibility to a great level to handle the stresses of the environment. So I'm not sure if anyone can still hear and see me here, but this axis here is your person's physiologic function and energy level, right? And this is time as we age, as human beings. And what happens is that over time, the energy needed to maintain homeostasis, which is something our bodies still undergo also. Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry for those on virtual. But I was just presenting that as time increases and as we age as human beings, it does require more energy just to maintain our basic normal homeostatic functions or homeostasis. And what also happens proportionately, but almost as an inverse, is that our fragility or risk of illness also meets at a point where we in our human bodies can become more frail and fragile and more prone to illness or pathologies. And what really occurs that we oftentimes hear and see among our peers, friends, and family is that one's ability to function normally on a day-to-day basis can decrease over time. And this is sometimes, one of my patients told me, that's kind of sad, Dr. Wynn. But it's life. And it's life and it's eventual death. But it doesn't mean that the time in between that we have here is how we spend it and how we still take care of ourselves to maintain as much capacity, energy, and reserve as possible. And again, not all hope is lost, as we'll continue to discuss. All right, I'm back to my podium here. So there are theories on aging, and I've chosen to not focus too much on this, but there are several theories on aging, and I don't think that the scientific and the medical community has really come to a true consensus on why we age, other than the fact that it's a natural process. And they found evidence supporting multiple theories, but that the two biggest ones is the errors in aging theory, where our DNA over time is prone to have more errors, and by virtue of that, the aging process it eventually creeps in. The programming theories of aging is when genes are turned on and off, and that really happens throughout our lifetime, from birth until we age and death, is that our genetics also is predetermined such where we age, and hence the natural process. There are different categories of aging, and I think what's important here is to understand that there are different types of aging. There's chronological ages, how many years old a person is. Biologic age, or sometimes I call it medical age, is how is a person feeling? How are they medically? How many medical problems and conditions do they have? There is appearance aging, and oftentimes we see that. It's how one looks. Psychological aging, how one feels and how one acts and behaves. And then there's social aging, is what society expects of us, and what we assume as we age as people. But there are some trajectories here, and I realize for the sake of time, this is not a medical school class, but we're talking to individuals like as yourselves who are very interested in the process. But what I would tell you here is that this diagram represents different types of aging trajectories. And for the sake of it, I'll kind of jump up here again. We can talk about it real quickly here. So what you see in the diagram up here is almost very similar to that other diagram I showed you for homeostasis versus homeostenosis. And this diagram up here, although very rudimentary, says that this is a person's health and function and time. And as we all live our lives, we would want to have a life where we are as healthy as possible until we reach a point where naturally, when it's time, when our maker calls us, we go home, we die. And that's called squaring of the curve. Here is also another diagram similar to that, where it does come a point in time, but it's not a straight sudden death, but a terminal illness causes an individual to die. Here's where we have other concerns, where a person is healthy in the beginning and then has a disease, gets better from it, but doesn't go back to where they were on their function, And what you see is this gradual decline here. And that's where people see us a lot as medical doctors. And then here's an individual who perhaps has lived a life of frailty, probably born with an illness, a congenital illness, and just slowly over time decreases their function. And what we do want to prevent is the bottom two to focus mostly on an individual's health and function. So I do have a case study to kind of help bring this point home a little bit more. And since this is an island that has a strong naval presence, I figured I'd give you one with a little bit of a naval history here. So I'll share with you a story about a 12-year-old boy who grew up in Plattsburgh, New York, and his elderly father. No secret here, that 12-year-old boy is me. This is as Andy Warhol says, everyone gets 15 minutes of fame, and I probably used up a good 14 minutes of it on this one article here back in 2000, about 24 years ago. And I will try my best to read it to you all here, because I can't even read it on my screen. So it says, pre-med students usually dream about glamour jobs in medicine, becoming a surgeon. Not Khai, a senior at UCLA, when age 22 says he hopes to specialize in geriatric medicine, and he has already begun to study the aging process. I'll paraphrase a few things. Wen carries a minor in gerontology, which includes courses in aging biology, social public policy issues, and he goes on to say, I know that as a future healthcare professional, it will enrich my career if I study gerontology now. He says, my father, who's in his mid-70s, and he suffered a stroke in 1989, a lot of the things I'm learning now apply to my own life. Some issues are bleak, but there's hope I can make a difference in the future. So that's why you see me here today. But here's the case study. So here's my dad, age 20 to 50s. He was in the South Vietnamese Navy, served as a liaison to the United States Navy. And he suffered from high blood pressure. He had cholesterol issues. He was smoking most of his adult life. And he did have a poor diet, ate a lot of salt. That man loved salt. He sailed the salty seas and it was in his blood as well. Was doing fairly healthy. And you can imagine the diagrams that I've shared with you earlier. So I'm going to fast forward from his 20 to 50s and get to his 60s. And back in 1989, he suffered a stroke because of his overall health and also his lifestyle. And I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the 70s now. And he had a fall. And since he had a fall after his stroke, he had a significant fear of falling and did not do much. He ended up suffering a heart attack shortly after the fall. And now we're going to go ahead and move to the 80s. I realize that I am on a time constraint to make sure we have time for questions. And God bless him, he had a fall with a hip fracture in his 80s. That continued. He had a gastrointestinal bleed because he got medications that he shouldn't have been on, being on blood thinners, and that caused him to have gut bleeding. He coughed up blood, also had blood in his stool, was in the ICU for some time. He ended up developing dementia and weight loss during this time. Now we're gonna forward to the next decade in his 90s. Bless him, he was able to live to his 90s despite all these things. And he got pneumonia at that time. And he eventually passed at age 93. At least on the US legal documents, he was 93, but a lot of immigrants, what they do is they say that they're younger when they come to the United States so they can be of working age. So we think, and he's never told anyone, we think he's actually 95 or 96. And this was a picture of him shortly before he passed. That was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, but I always say 5. For some reason, that always sticks in my head. So I want to share with you all that this care is inconvenient, not because he was my dad, but because this is that very same trajectory I shared with you that I try to help my own patients avoid and heal from. His quality of life, as you can see there, he still had a good quality of life despite that. And you know, my family and I kept drawing the line up and down where his quality of life was, because he's not here to share that with us anymore. But he had a fairly good quality of life, even as he aged. And ideally, there's this idea called squaring of the curve. And so as you can see where the green is, that's where we generally would like people. That's an ideal state, right? But that's not necessarily always achievable unless you're Jack LaLanne. You know, Jack LaLanne did this, right? And that actually is normal aging. Jack LaLanne is normal aging, but you know, it doesn't mean that it's average aging, right? And so squaring of the curve is what a lot of demographers, a lot of social scientists talk about. But it's not just my dad, it's other people's parents too. You know, Mitt Romney had a fall, former Supreme Court Justice RBG had this when she was in the Supreme Court, she had a fall in her office. President Jimmy Carter also had a pelvic fracture as well and is still going strong, bless him. So care can be inconvenient for older adults. It can be, doesn't have to be. I want to share with you some of the latest information that just came out. This is just technically hot off the press by a few weeks. And that's pretty good for medical information and data here. And Ken Dykewald, who many of you may have read his book, Stage Wave, back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, but he's still a formidable force in talking about aging. And he got together with some, with the Harris Poll and the Johnny Hartford Foundation that funds a lot of work in geriatrics and some of the work that I've done as well, to better understand what older adults are actually thinking and not just assuming what older adults are thinking. And it says here that older adults are dissatisfied with the healthcare system, especially out-of-pocket costs. So what this is showing is that when asked about specific aspects of the healthcare system, older adults essentially rated the healthcare, today's current healthcare system. And we're not talking about UC San Diego Health or Sharp or Scripps. We're just talking about health systems en masse. People aren't happy. I'm not sure if any of you are ecstatic about your healthcare right now, but that's what these older adults that were polled said or surveyed. They also showed that those with 3 or more health problems are far less satisfied with their care. So in other words, if they're on a trajectory to have more than 3 medical issues, people are oftentimes even more dissatisfied. And that to me also says that if you are interacting more with the health system, you're more likely to be dissatisfied with it the more you interact with it. That's not good. You know, it's not like going to Disneyland, but I think Disneyland's the same way. You know, the more you interact with Disneyland, the more you're annoyed with it. I know this is being recorded, so I hope the Disney company doesn't rescinds their job for me to take over as their CEO. But compared to other older adults, again, this is something that concerns them. What is inconvenient care? It's care that doesn't have the following, in my opinion, and in a lot of the medical literature for geriatrics. Care that does not integrate a person's goals and values. And think about yourselves or your loved ones that are currently going through this process. Care that is based on evidence. Care that's focused on a person's function and well-being. Assisting families on goals of care and decision-making. Prevention, I mean, that it still holds true. A pound of prevention is worth more than a ton of cure. Focused on geriatric syndromes, which we don't really talk about, but if we have time during the Q&A, I can talk about that a little more. Comprehensive medication review, and that's just not your doctor, your nurse, or your medical team knowing your medical issues, but actually understanding why you're on the medications. Coordinating health and coordinating their healthcare transitions from hospital to nursing facility and or home with home health, understanding that process, and collaborating with family and other disciplines. Now, it seems like a long list, but it's not that hard. These are what I think are the medical decencies, the healthcare decencies that we have for taking care of our fellow people. And really that amounts to care that's not age friendly. But there is an opportunity for age friendly care. We have about 10 minutes left, and I think we're gonna do this. We're gonna get through this here. What is convenient care? So I shared with you earlier on that a part of the work that I do as a national medical director at a Medicare deemed and CMS deemed accrediting organization called CHAP is that it is care that is age friendly. And there are some robust goals that this movement was started with by the Johnny Hartford Foundation that funds a lot of aging pieces. There's plenty of resources, if anyone's interested. You can look up Johnny Hartford, and there's a lot of resources for older adults there. They got together with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement that is all about changing larger health systems for the better. And the goal essentially is that they want to get older adults the best care possible. They want to reduce any healthcare related harms to older adults. Also, they want older adults to be satisfied with their care, and they want older adults and their families to really get value out of their care, not just for them, but also for their family, caregivers, and the community as well. It is a social movement that's based on evidence. And the evidence is what they call the 4 M's, which I will share with you now. So if you're gonna walk away with anything during this talk, walk away with 4 things. 1, as an older adult, know and share what matters to you. And when we talk about that, we talk about, as geriatricians and healthcare providers, is care should be aligned with what the older adult wants for themselves and their health. 2, medications. Understand and know what medications you're on, because as one ages, as one goes from homeostasis to homeostenosis, that older adult bodies are different, just as children's bodies are different, requires a pediatrician. But the analog is a geriatrician who understands that medicines affect older adults in different ways, because the older adult kidneys have changed in its function, liver, so on and so forth. Thirdly, mentation. It's not just about memory, but it's about how a cognitive brain continues to work and change as a person ages, and how older adults can be more vulnerable to memory disorders and cognitive disorders. And we oftentimes think about Alzheimer's disease, right? And also lastly, mobility is maintaining function for older adults such as yourselves to be able to live your life as you normally do and to function. And if your medical team and your doctor can help maintain that, that is key and critical. Doesn't change for us at any part in our lives that we should function as independently as possible, whether you're 20 or 80. Here's a picture of me a few years ago as UC San Diego Health was the first health system to get recognition as an age-friendly health system. And we really put the fire underneath the other organizations to say, yeah, it's about time we put a stamp on it. And we put our money where our mouth is. And we're still on that journey today. Here are some of the geriatricians that I work with. We are quite a diverse group of people who have one vision and mission in mind. It's taking care of our amazing older adults who have contributed so much to our society. So what also has shown too, according to Ken Dykewald in the Age Wave survey, was that when they surveyed older adults, most older adults say that they're not getting age-friendly healthcare. Does that surprise any of you? No. Only 19% of older adults surveyed said their healthcare provider routinely covers the essential of age-friendly care, which is the 4 M's I talked to you about. What matters to you? a comprehensive medication review, not just knowing what you're on, but understanding that and helping you understand that and taking off medicines that are perhaps no longer safe for you to take as older adults. Mentation, making sure your cognitive health is there and focusing on prevention, and also mobility. And just a few more statistics here is older adults who receive age-friendly care report better healthcare relationships and outcomes with their healthcare providers. So there are a lot of age-friendly initiatives, not all hope is lost. Medicare is undergoing significant reform with its payment systems. Also, again, all those words there, I guess in summary, is saying that Medicare is trying to build more value in your care and really holding the healthcare system's feet to the fire. More recently, just out this past month, was that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has approved a new hospital measure that's called an age-friendly hospital measure. And it focuses on the 4 M's. And when you don't measure something, then it cannot be improved. And so that is something that's changing. And that was a huge move that CMS made. There are a lot of programs that you'll see here. You'll see the age-friendly health systems with my arrow here. There's also geriatric surgery programs for older adults. There's also ERs that are designed for older adults as well and to get accreditation, and also age-friendly care at home. I will share with you that over the last 4 years, with my role as a National Medical Director, we were the first organization to bring about a certification in age-friendly care at home for home health and hospices across the country. And actually, there are no other organizations that have certification that certifies that an organization is focusing on the 4 M's of age-friendly care. So really, really happy to be a part of that process. As most older adults are not in the hospitals, most older adults, when they're getting their care, are living in the community and are benefiting from home health services and caregiving agencies and other home-based care. These are a lot of age-friendly designations here that currently exist. And again, there's age-friendly universities, age-friendly businesses, age-friendly employers. I know I'm not in San Diego, and I was looking for Coronado, but as you know, San Diego, right across the channel, is an age-friendly city. But I also found out that Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, Solana Beach, Carlsbad, and National City all have age-friendly initiatives to be a part of the age-friendly communities. I'm not sure if Coronado, I just couldn't find any. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I'd like to add Coronado to this list. And if Coronado isn't, they know where to reach us. So this is also another project that I've been had the wonderful opportunity to be funded for by the Dr. Seuss Foundation, of all things. Dr. Seuss Foundation funds health literacy. I'm sorry, they fund literacy. And when we applied for a grant, we decided to focus on health literacy. Health literacy is not about necessarily being able to read medical text in journals, but it's how a person, an older adult and their caregivers, can learn how to use health information rather than just understand it. And also make the most well-informed decisions for yourselves, and not just what people deem as the appropriate medical decisions. And the idea here is that as care gets more complex, and people have more medical problems, they have more medications, they have more specialists, that oftentimes it does require you to have a degree in being a patient, right? And so this guide will be available for free at the UCC websites, and I will be sure to send Kirk some copies once it's done. And I'd happy to send you some signed copies, or unsigned if you prefer them not to be signed. And really the goal is to focus on helping older adults as yourselves achieve your own age-friendly care, and not wait for your doctors, your busy nurses, to ask you about the 4 M's. You go in and you get it yourselves. I'm also involved with the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego, where we received a grant. There's actually 2 grants, as you can see there, in the past 2 years, to focus on addressing ageism in the museum and helping to welcome more older adults into the museum and how that can benefit. And just in good fashion, I will end it with this last piece here, is that there is plenty of hope. There is plenty of hope that even though a lot of the issues seem bleak, and that there is hope that we, not just I, can make a difference in the future. And care does not have to be inconvenient. It can be more than convenient for you. It can be age friendly. And this is your view of San Diego from across the channel. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. We'll take a 5-minute break, but first, probably thinking of Coronado, the reason it never applied for the age-friendly city is because traditionally Coronado is known for a place for old people to live and their parents. We'll take 5 minutes for a coffee break. We'll get to
Hey, Doc, how you doing?
How you doing?
Right, bring them up. She's down there She's in the tower. No, she's not. Her and my grandfather. A little extra here, but she's still on the hospital. You know, for almost 10 days. So when he died, she was able to have a community right there, which was really helpful for her. Yeah, so it's nice. She likes it there. Very pretty. Yeah, yeah. Of course, being at home is that's the best. Yeah. The literature has changed over the last however many years. It's really changed. It's been more lively.
Good care of me. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, baby center. Wow. What a neat idea. That's such a smart idea. The art I figured I probably would see.
That's a good thing.
But where did she work for? So I'm not much better weather down here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's how we came back to this area. Our family, or my family is here. That's why we weren't told. And so my parents, my sister, my grandmother,
Okay, we're going to start the Q&A. Everybody, thank you.
I'm Jessica.
Jessica.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
And the first question is where? Right there, RG.
Well, never admitting to be a patient. I would have a question. What advice do you have for caregivers of people in this situation?
Increasingly, there are more and more national grants from the Hartford Foundation and other places that are actually funding and recognizing caregivers for the work that they do. I do think that having more programs to help support that is key because oftentimes when patients come in to visit me, it's their caregivers that are taking time off of work or taking care of their children and their parents, and oftentimes their loved ones as well. So it's a full-time job, but you almost need a degree as well to become a caregiver. And that Triton guide that you asked me about does focus to some level on also. I know I'm using the word arming, but not that it's a battle, but really helping to equip the caregivers with tools on how to better advocate for their loved ones.
Next question, Tim LaFleur.
Doctor, thank you for a great presentation. What's your advice for us to stay on that top line of better quality of life? What are the things that we can do to optimize our own performance and keep us on the better path?
Yeah. Well, first of all, whatever you all are doing to have gotten here today, continue. I think that the secret sauce, it's in there, and I think that you all already have that. And the purpose of it is being active, continue living your life. And notice I'm saying being active. I'm not saying go out and exercise a ton, unless you're a sprinter or a runner, former Olympian, then by all means exercise. But if you're like most of us, to maintain your activity level and to continue doing what you do. Oftentimes I get asked, Dr. Wayne, I want to walk 5 miles a day. What do I need to do to walk 5 miles a day? Do I need to go to the gym and work out? I go, no. To walk 5 miles a day, you need to continue walking 5 miles a day. So the other piece of it too is really focusing on prevention. And I know I said a pound of prevention, but it's really an ounce of prevention. It's a pound of cure. That's what I meant to say earlier. But I guess also what I want to share with you is really focusing on the evidence-based practice of the 4 M's. The 4 M's was achieved. I'll just take a moment here. When the Hartford Foundation decided to pour millions of dollars in national grants to really create this body of work that is the age-friendly health systems, what has occurred is that they got together all these experts. Of course, they didn't invite me at that time, but they got better experts in and they said, hey, what really about geriatrics care and the care of older adults really works, And what they found was so difficult was that geriatrics, like some other specialties, does not have an organ system, but we have a person. It's more holistic. We have an older person. And oftentimes the pathology, disease-focused medicine and dogma of medicine doesn't compute that. There has to be an organ system. You have to be a nephrologist or a cardiologist in order to be able to help people understand that. So And so they got together all these experts and they distilled it down that among all the evidence that's out there, that if we focus on these 4Ms, an older adult will be getting evidence-based care, which leads to better quality outcomes, better health, better prevention, better function, the list goes on.
Next question comes from Paradise Cove, Malibu.
And the guide that I have is actually based on the 4Ms. Why reinvent the wheel? Yes, sir.
Thank you, great topic. I'm a physician and I really appreciated all that you've said today and totally agree with the 4Ms. I think the biggest one, as a sports medicine doc, is movement, mobility, getting out there, flexibility, keeping the weight down. I think alcohol reduction is important, and our new standards for intake of alcohol for women and men over the age of 65, 1 drink for a woman, 2 for a man, is important. But I think 2 things. I think doctors are so busy in their daily practice, it's hard to go through the 4Ms and do a, mini mental status exam. I'd like to know what quick cognitive exams you all recommend. And then secondly, how do you assess movement? Is it just by, what are you doing? How are you, but I think, looking at least once a year at somebody's flexibility, range of motion, strength, agility, performance, power, those kinds of things that are quickly testable in a clinic situation can give that person a lot of tips, can give that patient a lot of things to work with. And then, chronic pain, plantar fasciitis, those things that slow people down really have to be addressed. So cognitive question. And lastly, cognitive tests, but also how are these CMS requirements impacting specialists? Like if you go to a surgeon perhaps and you need to have surgery and they go, wait, you've got to do this 4M testing before you're qualified. How do you see that impacting the busy surgeon's life?
Yeah. So there's a few things to unpack there. Hopefully I can be able to answer it all here. The first one is the and thank you very much for sharing that. I think the sports medicine doctors and the physiatrists, which I know are not the same thing in PM&R, are so critically key and important when focusing on prevention and when one does have a need for it afterwards. The cognitive testing, I refuse to answer that question because I don't want to give the answer to the test. I'll tell you afterwards. There are
I won't
several,
remember it. So.
Yeah. there are several tests out there that can be done quick and fast. That are the initial screenings, but you can access everything online. And if I tell you, then you're going to go look it up and you're going to actually influence your test once and if you need it. So what I would say, if you don't need it, don't look it up, and let that stand on its own. I think the other thing to unpack too is the M part of the mobility. I would say there's no specific actual recipe that I have to on physical activity. I'll leave it to the physical activity experts. And if you need to talk to your doctor about it, and I think that there's really the question is, how can a busy doctor focus on all 4Ms during their visits? And keep in mind, one key thing I did mention to you was that these 4Ms are all practiced as a whole. The sum of its parts is greater, and hopefully I'm saying that right, than its individual parts, right? And that Gestalt theory is true here, is that each and one of those M's are interacting and affect one another. You can't just pick one out and say, I'm only going to use this only one piece. The evidence is in all of them. The innovation is in all of them. And even though it is practiced separately, as doctors currently do it, the idea is that doctors and nurses and hospitals and health systems are already doing it, but they practice it in fragmentation. And so understanding it all every single time, every single visit for an older adult makes it easier as we all do it, and not just waiting for a person to get to the surgeon and we're going to do the 4Ms for the first time for you. Right. This should be something that's practiced throughout constitutively. So, and I think our health system and all the doctors and nurses were smart enough to work smarter, not harder. And so the 4Ms, I mean, I gotta tell you, when I look at the 4Ms, it's already things that are being done already. It just has to be done more systematically and also more purposeful when an older adult comes in. And I know that's not an exact answer, but there are plenty of journal articles and pieces about how to do it better, faster, and achieve better outcomes. It is possible without working harder.
Next question, Morgan Miller.
Oh, thank you for a great presentation. My whole family seems to be in healthcare. Myself, my grandfather worked at Kaiser, my wife's still a physician at the VA. And my observation has been that it is very limiting by the system, like you said, it's our healthcare system. So my question is, rather than reinvent the wheel, like you mentioned, and one thing that we get stuck in our straw that we're looking through, have you looked at other countries? This is where I think we can always gain by looking at other systems. And that's why I was kind of curious, is there a system or country out there that kind of does what the 4M or the elderly or gerontologic care better than we do? Thanks.
There are other models of care. I mean, oftentimes we think about the Canadian nationalized system, the NHS with the National Health Service in the UK. But those have been studied right and left and actually have better outcomes, but there's access issues there that we know are true. And I think that the American system is so, I can't think of a better word. Can I swear on this? It's so damn unique that it's hard for us to go back in time and change. You know, ever since post World War II, where we as a society have decided to connect fringe benefits, which includes healthcare, with the employers, we can't separate ourselves from that reality. And so these health systems were nationalized from the beginning at its very foundation. So for us to go back and do that is not necessarily all the answers, because they have ailing issues of this as well. But one of the examples I'll give you is an interesting thing I read in about a month ago. In Japan, they've decided to do things a little differently. And Japan is where we're gonna be in about 10, 15, maybe 20 years, where there is a large number of older adults. And as a matter of fact, there are cities that are probably like, I wanna say 70% or more older adults. And what they did was they said, well, let's think outside the healthcare model. And a lot of times there's this saying about the answer to care of older adults or the ails of the health system are oftentimes outside of the health system. And it's true, we're focusing on social determinants now. I took out those slides on social determinants, but it's things that affect people's health in the community. And that's what those age-friendly cities are doing now, is they're focusing on social determinants that affect someone's health, right? But with that said though, what Japan did was they said, well, what profession goes around to every door every day delivering things to people? And so they have worked with their postal service to check up on older adults and sometimes check their blood pressure, see how they're doing, share it with the public health service that they have, the county. But the thing is, can you imagine in this country if your postman was snooping around your window, asking where you were? You would say, what in tarnation? It just wouldn't work in this country. We wouldn't want the government snooping around and checking our blood pressures and reporting us to the, and so other models do, there are things to glean. I think you have a lot of great points. But I think we have to do it our own way. And that doesn't mean that we go without evidence. But we have to do it the way that we as Americans in the more and more diverse population that we have, to understand that one size doesn't fit all. And so what works in an Indian reservation versus, a community that's mostly Black or Asian or Caucasian or so forth, or a mix, that there are a set of principles we all apply, such as the 4Ms. As an example, that's not the only answer I have. It sounds like everything I'm saying is 4Ms, but that we can apply that to that community and to account for their diversity as well. So I hope that answers that.
Next question, RG.
I really like the 4Ms, there's a lot there. Can you say a little bit more about mentation? that wasn't exactly clear. It's gotta be a board that just trying to avoid depression.
Yeah, I kind of zoomed through that, so I could, then put a checklist that I finished by, 10:45. So, because I've been known to ramble, mentation, the mentation part of the 4Ms particularly focuses on detection, prevention of dementia and coexisting depression, and also preventing delirium when someone's admitted to the hospital. Now, what do all those words mean, right? So number one, as the good doctor over there had shared, is making sure that we are screening for memory or cognitive concerns. And by virtue of doing that, identifying things early enough to help people to be able to maintain their function and to know what matters, to elicit that for them, to focus on what medications may affect their mentation and how the medications can also affect their mobility and how their ability to be mobile can affect what matters to them and affects their mobility and therefore the mentation. So this is all about prevention, prevention, prevention. So, and that's it in a nutshell. I mean, there's whole lectures you can do just on mentation alone. And there are a lot of discussions now, not only on prevention, but even treatment of Alzheimer's disease, right? With these new biologics that are out now, like lecanemab. And there are a subset of individuals that qualify for it and some that don't. And it costs, the last I heard, is that it can cost someone about $200,000 a year to take it. You know, so money is not an object, and you qualify, then it might work for you. But for most of us Americans, even with the best insurance, 200 grand a year is not an option. But at least there is a therapeutic that, albeit not perfect, is something that we're working towards in the medical community.
Next question, Dr. Nolan.
You mentioned about older people, geriatrics, not having an organ. Well, neither does pediatrics. And I wonder if you ever go back and sort of look at the pediatric literature, because mentation, mobility, medications, vaccinations, whatever, are somewhat the same. And the reason I mention it is because AIDS would have been treated a lot more quickly, would have been diagnosed a lot more quickly if anyone had any awareness of pediatric autoimmune disease.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. The father or the parent of geriatrics had mentioned that there should be, as the demographics have changed in the, I think, early 1900s, said that, well, we have doctors for younger children, and we already know that there's more older adults now. Perhaps we should have a specialty focused on older adults. So it was actually based on pediatrics as an analog. So and agreed that there are milestones in pediatrics. And the thing is that the world of geriatrics is trying not to be ageist in the care of older adults, meaning that most of the things that older adults want and hope for are things that you may have always wanted and hoped for when you were in your 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s and so forth. And really those goals may have evolved, but they haven't changed. And so what makes care, you know, we should treat people as people and not necessarily relegate them to an age. But of course, in the world of medicine, we have to, you know, dissect things, break things up into categories, and so that we can be able to reimburse for them when you come in and see us. So, you know, it just has to be separated as that, but yeah, we have, there are significant analogs, and even though geriatrics doesn't focus on an organ system, you know, I do know that older adults do have organs, but we're just not focused on the organ systems itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lynn. Very informative. We all appreciate you coming to speak to us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
As a reminder, before you leave, next meeting is November 15th on the League of Wives. And I'd like to thank Kirk Henry for the presentation and the introduction. And also to Admiral Charles Martolio for taking taking down the presentation for the article that will appear in the Eagle. And also thank you to the library and Zoe this morning. Thank you all for coming. So we look forward to having you next time.